Okay, hello. Welcome to the registration webinar for incoming BDCI students. I am Alexa. I'm the student recruitment specialist, and I'm joined today by Sarah, the undergraduate program specialist. And before we get started, we want to let you know that this will be recorded, so everyone can refer to this information later. So thank you if you are watching this at a later time. So during the session today, we are going to cover registration for fall and winter term. We're going to provide you with some BDCI resources that are available to you. We'll answer some frequently asked questions, and then we also have some time. So if the people joining us today have questions, we can also answer those in the chat. So if you do have a question that comes up during the presentation, please go ahead and put those in the chat, and then we'll address them at the end. We are also going to have some QR codes scattered throughout the presentation. So it might be useful to have your phone at the ready so that you can collect those. We will also drop the links in the chat if that's easier for you. Okay. The University of Calgary, located in the heart of southern Alberta, both acknowledges and pays tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Now I will pass it over to Sarah.
Thank you, Alexa. So I wanted to start off first with all of you as incoming BDCI students. We have put up on our website a recommended registration, so a program guide where you follow what we recommend that you take in your first year all the way to your last year. So the most relevant is this upcoming fall and winter. So what I've listed here is in fall 2023, these are the 5 courses that we recommend that you take. And then winter 2024 are the next set of classes that you take. So as a quick reminder, you do need to register in both your fall and winter classes for the start of this year. And then the other thing to keep in mind is a lot of the fall classes, the design classes, are prerequisites for your winter classes. So if you don't take some of the courses in the fall, it may affect what you can take in winter 2024. The other thing I've listed is specific lectures. So you'll see in SUS 201, Data 201, and NT 201, those ones have specific lectures that have been saved for BDCI students. And those are also the lectures that don't conflict with your current schedule. So what I would recommend is if you haven't registered into any of those courses yet, make sure you keep an eye on the specific lectures and labs, because those are the only ones that are saved for you and for BDCI students for this upcoming year. And so here you're going to see 2 QR codes. The one on the left is the BDCI degree planning page. So this is where all of the program guides I mentioned, any videos I talk about registration, all those resources are found on the left. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to see the program advising QR code. And so this is a way to connect with me if you need help, if you want to set up an appointment with me for one-on-one discussion, or if you want to join one of the group advising sessions. This is all where you can find it. So I do recommend, if you're looking at the recommended course sequence and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can follow everything, or I want to take less, but I'm not sure which ones I should stick with, definitely chat with me so you can connect with me that way. All right. So Alexa.
Right, sorry. Yes. So now we have some questions that have come in that are frequently asked questions. And so we're just going to try to give you all the resources that we can from these questions here. The first one is, do I have to take all of the kind of BDCI SAPL recommended courses for the first year?
Yeah, very good question. Definitely hear this one a lot. So previously on that slide, we saw the 10 courses that we had recommended, but you don't need to take all of them. Certainly, there's some students who are involved in other extracurriculars. We have varsity athletes. We have people who have other commitments. So we tend to see students who might take less than the 5 in each semester. But with that in mind, I would say always chat with me to discuss. And so in that QR code right there that I have, this is just to the program advising page again, so how to connect with me. And so you can connect with me and we can talk about, what are mandatory courses if you want to keep progressing in some of the design courses each year. highlighting which ones are the prerequisite courses that are important. So if you don't take all of them, but you miss a critical one, it will affect your subsequent semester's courses. So kind of discussing that as well. And then as well as degree progression, if you are taking less courses, how will that look like for the duration of your degree? It will certainly take longer than the 4 years if you are taking less. And so what would that look like in your plans? And then the other thing to keep in mind is if you are thinking of pursuing a concentration in BDCI, so either the architecture concentration or the landscape architecture concentration, then if you take less courses, you might not be eligible for the change of program to jump into the concentration until a later year. So there are a variety of things that you need to consider when you're taking less courses. So I will preface it is that you don't need to take all of them. But if you want to follow a certain objective, like finishing on time in 4 years, then it's best that you take all of them. But if there's something that comes up and you need to change it, then I would recommend that you chat with me so we can make sure that your case and the decisions you make fit with what your goals are at the end.
Okay, awesome. And those links are also in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. Wait, I have to register for fall and winter courses. This is super unique to U of C, I think. So yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, I think it depends on the institution, but for U of C, it is really important that you register for both your fall and winter. And typically for U of C, when you get to register, we always tell you to register for both because what you register in the fall will affect what you get into the winter, especially with prerequisite courses. And we like to make sure that students who need those courses get into them as soon as possible so that we can protect that space for you. So one of the things that just mentioning right here is the reserve caps. So they lift on July 25th for both fall and winter. So courses are saved for just BDCI students. If you don't register for them by July 24th, you're going to miss out on the spots saved for you in your fall and winter courses. So it's very important. If you only register for your fall classes, you want to go right now and get into your winter ones as well.
Okay, great. Next question here. What are reserve caps? We just referred to them, but what are they?
Yeah. So in that QR code, you're going to find the registration definitions about reserve caps and many more things. But reserve caps are something that each faculty will implement as course restrictions. Typically, they're really popular classes, like they get snapped up right away really quickly. And what we do is we protect the seats in those courses for students who need it for progression in a certain degree. So for example, I mentioned before, if you are pursuing a concentration, typically you have to finish all the courses that we recommend in the 2 years so that you can start it in your 3rd year. So that means certain courses that you need to take, we make sure we save a spot for you so you can get into them. And these courses sometimes are not courses that we control. So if it's, for example, Data 201 is offered by the Faculty of Science. So what happens is each year we negotiate with the Faculty of Science to make sure that we save seats for our students. And the Faculty of Science will make sure that if you're a BDCI student, there are seats for you in that class, but they cannot hold on to those courses forever for you. And that's why there is an end date. So I think the next page, here is an example of on course search when you look up a class. So Data 201 is the one here. You're going to see under class restrictions when the restrictions start, so right at the beginning of registration, then you see the end date. So basically on July 25th, so basically midnight when it hits July 25th, all the reserve caps disappear. And the 70 seats that were reserved for BDCI students in this example, they disappear, and anybody who's been waiting to get into the class will be able to get into it. So it's very important that for our students, our BDCI students, you want to make use of this reserve cap because once it's gone, we can't get you into that class.
Okay. Great. All right, next question here. I'm not sure I want to take all of the fall and winter classes. So what do we suggest in that case scenario?
A lot of similar questions. I think a lot of students are worried about their course load. So my recommendation is right now, take advantage of your reserve caps. So again, to all the classes that we recommend, so the full course load in both fall and winter, and then chat with me so that we can discuss, what works best for you, what makes sense. And then you can drop your class before the drop deadline. And so that QR code is to the academic schedule, which lists all the relevant add drop deadlines for each semester. And for the fall semester, it's not anytime soon, like it's coming up in September. So you do have a lot of time, but you don't have a lot of time for your reserve caps. So that's why the emphasis is get into your classes first, chat with me over the summer, and then before the drop deadline in September, you can drop the classes that you don't need by that point. And then the thing I had mentioned before, course overloads. So course overloads are basically when a class is full and a student really needs it or wants to take it, they will request to see if we can add them over the maximum of that class. That is not guaranteed. Sometimes we're restricted by fire code. So the actual physical capacity of the room, it cannot hold more students, or there are not enough resources. So let's say there are not enough TAs to support additional students in the class, as an example, then the faculty offering the course will have to deny the request for a course overload. So it's very much case by case and also not guaranteed. So I do recommend to students, like if you're not sure about class, but right now you have the advantage to get into it first, because the alternative is going to be much harder when you haven't gotten in and it's full and you're trying to get in. A lot of times we're not going to be able to get you in. So we do recommend that you just get into it now and kind of wait later to make the next possible choice.
Okay, great. Next question here. I'm following the program guide for the landscape architecture concentration. Do I need to do anything else aside from taking the right classes?
Good question. All right. So one of the things is when you come into BDCI, everyone starts in the general BDCI programs. They're all following the same thing. No one is in a concentration. So there's no direct entry from high school or transfer to get into a concentration. You all have to elect for it later on. So what happens is at the right time, you're going to apply for it via the change of program process. And what happens is when the deadline hits, we'll be looking at whether or not you've met all the admission requirements to change into that concentration. And that's where the program guide recommendations come in. So earlier I talked about what do you need to take each year? What is the recommendation? If you plan on taking your concentration in your third year, then you need to meet all of those course requirements in your first 2 years. So that's where you need to take all the classes that we've listed. However, if you're like, oh, well, I do want to take the concentration, but I'm going to wait till a later year, then you can take the first, 2 or 3 years to kind of meet all your program requirements, apply, and then if you're successful, you can get into the program. One thing to keep in mind, it is competitive admission. So similar to BDCI in general, there are limited spots in the program itself, and then there are limited spots in the concentration as well. So if you're thinking of getting into a certain concentration, I would recommend making sure that you stay competitive in your grades and make sure you meet all your program requirements, because it is a top-down selection process. And so not everyone who applies can get into the concentration program.
Hey, great. There's some stuff going on and I want to delay my studies. Can I start in fall 2024 instead of this upcoming September?
So for the person who sent this in, I'm sorry to hear that there's some stuff going on, but it is really important that you take that time for yourself. Sometimes you need that year to kind of sort everything out before you jump into the program. And we really do support that. So the one thing to keep in mind, though, is that for deferrals of admission, it is outside of our hands. So we don't actually make the decision on whether or not you can defer your studies. But what we recommend is that you talk to the admissions team. So that QR code right there is to take you to their contact page. And so it's very important to chat with them to see, to let them know about your situation and to see if it's possible to defer your studies until a later year. Now, for students who are currently in BDCI, the one thing that's really important is that you have to be enrolled in at least one course in the fall 2023 semester to maintain your admissions. So sometimes there are a couple students I've chatted with a while back who wanted to stay in the program and they just could not take all the courses. So what they've done is they've actually just registered for one course in the fall and another course in the winter just to keep their registration. And then they'll start officially in fall 2024 instead by making up with all these other courses. So I would say, I may sound like a broken record, but connect with me. We've put our contact information throughout this slides. These slides. So just make sure to connect with me so I know about your situation. If there's anything I can help you with, we can definitely chat about that too.
Okay. Here we go. I'm enrolled in all of my classes, but do you have any laptop suggestions?
Good question. We have been receiving a lot of those questions lately. So on the right, you're going to see a QR code that takes you to our tech page. So that's where SAPL has listed all the recommendations in software and hardware that they think you should get to help you be successful in our program, just because we use a lot of different programs for modeling, for building things. And so it's useful to make sure, it's helpful to make sure that you meet those specs in whatever laptop or computer that you choose. So I've put in our email address as well. Sometimes you're going to look at our recommendations, but then you're going to go to the store and they might be a little bit different. So you can definitely send that information to bdci@sapl.ucalgary.ca. I'm not the best person to ask, but I will find someone who can review your inquiry to make sure like the things that you've listed work out well with the program needs. The other thing is just to be cautious of what sales representatives are telling you at the store, because they may not be familiar with our programs and what type of specs are needed. They may just say like, yeah, it should be fast enough, don't worry about it. But it's better for you to double check with us and then before buying it, because sometimes you'll feel that pressure when you're buying at the store that like, hey, they said everything's good, I should just go with it. But we have actually had several incidents where students are like, hey, you know, the guy at this place told me it's good, but it's definitely not up to snuff. So we want to save you from that trouble. So feel free to check in with me if you have questions about that.
Okay, great.
All right, so that's the end of the major questions that people had sent in. But one of the things we want to remind everyone is to fill out the web form. This was sent a while back too, just via email to all of you. If you didn't receive that email, let me know actually at the BDCI email contact, just because we had, I think one student who mentioned they weren't receiving updates from us, and we've been sending some important reminders as you're getting ready for September. And so one of the things is this QR code. It takes you to a web form so that you can fill out some information for us. We are in the midst of planning a lot of cool things for all of you when you arrive. So we want to make sure that we have all of that information ahead of time so that we can set up stuff for you. So make sure you visit that code, so you can go to the web form and fill it out. I promise you it will only take you a few minutes, so it won't take long. And again, as a reminder, if you did not receive an email from me indicating that there's a few things, including filling out this web form, please let me know at the BDCI email, because I want to follow up and make sure you're all set up right.
Okay. So if you do have any additional questions, like Sarah said, please make sure you contact us. We have a bunch of different ways that you can get a hold of us and connect with us. So you can join a group advising session. You can book an appointment on Elevate. The QR code is here on this screen, or you can go directly to the page and sign up. Or you can also email us at the bdci@sapl.ucalgary.ca. And yeah, we really want to thank everyone for submitting their questions ahead of time, for connecting with Sarah, for making sure that you are ready for September. And also for those of you who attended the session today, we have arrived at our question and answer period. So if you do have a question, please write it in the chat, or you can also use the Zoom button to raise your hand, and then we'll call on you to ask your question. But I do have a couple so far that have come into the chat. So the first one is, what happens if a student is in the BDCI program and they want to get into the concentration, but they don't get admitted into their specific concentration? What's that path look like?
I would say in that situation, come talk with me about what are the alternatives. That is something that, as you know, hasn't happened yet. So we don't have like the pathway set out, but from our side, we want to support you in your goals. And so if you're not successful in getting into the concentration, we can chat about what are the alternatives to getting into something like that. One thing to keep in mind is the concentrations are used to reduce the amount of time you would take in grad school. So the BDCI with the architecture concentration allows you to take the Masters of Architecture at U of C in 2 years instead of 3. So the foundational year is what makes up for the 3rd year for the MArch. But if you don't take the architecture concentration in BDCI and you still go into the Masters of Architecture, it would just mean that you would take an extra year. So that would be the difference. So same thing with the BDCI with the landscape architecture concentration. The concentration allows you to take the 2-year program of the Masters of Landscape Architecture. If you weren't able to get into the concentration and you still want to go into the Masters of Landscape Architecture, it would just be a 3-year program instead of 2. So I can understand how frustrating it could be to add on an extra year, but the reason behind that foundation program is really, as the name implies, to build that foundation so that you can progress into kind of the intensive course and theory that comes with that area. And so if you can't get into it on the undergraduate side, you still will be able to get into it on the graduate side. It's just a matter of maybe tweaking a few of things that you're doing to kind of springboard into something else while you get ready for grad school.
Yeah, and I will just piggyback on that just to say that that's why it's so important for you to connect with us. Come to advising, check in with us. If you are unsure about registration or which courses that you should take or what avenues are open to you as you progress through your program, please keep us in the loop, and then we can help you proactively or give you options for moving forward if something like that were to happen. But yeah, and also I would just encourage everyone to keep a really open mind. This program is going to give you a lot of information in all the sort of different fields. Some people might start thinking that they're going to apply to a specific concentration and then decide that they want to go in a different direction with the degree, and that's totally okay too. And there's other things that you can do also, like minors and other ways to kind of fill the program to customize it to your interests. So we will work with you, or I should say Sarah and her team will work with you to make sure that that you get everything out of your degree that you possibly can. Okay, the next question here is, okay, this isn't specifically about registration, but this person wanted to learn more about orientation. Can you talk about that? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So you may have received some emails or invitations from U of C in general, and it's to invite you to the new student orientation. So that happens usually the first week before classes start. So the kind of that week of August 28th is when it's happening. So that one is kind of what we call central orientation. And what happens there is you actually get to meet orientation leaders who are student leaders that are helping out, but you're taken to like a pep rally, you get a tour of the campus, you can learn more about all the different resources that are happening, not just within SAPL here, but outside of it. So things that you're going to interact with during your student life here. So you learn more about that. You're going to meet a lot of new people. And then there will be faculty specific sessions. So there will be a check-in at the beginning of orientation where you're going to get to meet with us, check in, just kind of more general information. And then you're going to go to the rest of the different orientation activities, which include some recommended sessions. And then there's ones where you can actually choose your own adventure, where you can pick what you are most interested in out of the sessions that are happening concurrently. And then there will also be a faculty orientation piece that's part of that overarching orientation 2 days. So you will have a chance to meet with us as well before you see us all the time. But those first 2 days for orientation are really nice to just kind of get a feel of what U of C is like and to meet people. So I highly recommend it. I know that they are asking students to register just because they have some things that they want to set up for you specifically. So it's very helpful to know some of your details so that they could tailor it for you.
And I just put that link, I think, into the chat. So hopefully you can find that registration and hopefully attend. It should be a lot of fun. You can start meeting people and making friends right away. Okay, next question here. I'm just scrolling up. Okay. Okay, this person, I believe, is international. They're still waiting to hear back about their study permit. So what should they do?
So I would say definitely chat with the International Student Services. So I'm just going to trouble you, Alexa, to just pop their link in the chat there. But with the ISS, they oversee all international student related matters. So if there are issues with study permit or visa, if there's something else that comes up, if you're worried about things like your postgraduate work permit letter, all of those things, you want to chat with ISS because they will give you advice that is related to, what are the expectations and guidelines around immigration and study permit and things like that. We're unfortunately not trained in it, so we don't want to misadvise you. Sometimes it's just a difference of one class that could affect an international student. And so we highly, highly emphasize that you chat with International Student Services right away, just so that they can help you and see what you can do in the meantime. But also, once you've chatted with them, give us a heads up as well. Like you can just say like, hey, Sarah, like just want to let you know, talk to ISS. This is what they said about my situation, just so we know, because we can keep track of it and we can also check in with you in case there's something that comes up. But yes, I would definitely start with the ISS.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Okay, this one is maybe adjacent to registration. I'm not sure. But they are asking, they've heard that we are going to be doing the studio-based courses. They're wondering if they are going to have to run across campus for their different courses that they're in, to go from design to sustainability to data science. So what is that going to look like in terms of that studio space?
Yeah, good question. So for BDCI, we're going to have our own designated space. It's basically our homeroom. So all of your design classes will be in that space. So anything that's labeled design DSGN on your schedule will all be in the same space, in that one hub. And then anything that isn't, so like sustainability is in a different classroom, but it won't be like, there's always time in between classes, which will give you the commute time so that you don't have to, rush there for a class that starts in a minute. You typically have around 10 to 15 minutes to commute across campus. But in the case of this coming year, Sustainability 201 is in a different room. And then you have NT 201 in the winter semester, which is also in a different room, but much later in the day. So you have a lot of time to travel to there. And then Data 201 is taught online. So I've already chatted with some students. Some are considering just doing it in their residence room. Some are going to do it at wherever else they're staying, and then taking the train after and getting to class here at SAPL on the Northwest campus. But whichever works for you. And the other alternative is you can actually show up early to campus, and you can actually plug in, because we're going to have every desk will have a monitor that you can plug into. So you can actually bring your headphones, plug in your laptop, and actually go to class in your hub. And then when you're done, you can take a break and then go on to your design class after. So that hub that I mentioned is really designed to be your space. A lot of students will end up kind of living in that space, but it's totally fine. And it's just something, whatever is most convenient for you.
Awesome. Okay, let me check the chat. Okay, this person is perhaps slightly apprehensive about getting started in a brand new undergraduate degree. They're planning to take less courses each semester so they can really focus on their studies. So is there a time limit to when they need to finish their degree? Kind of how does that work if they decide to take 4, let's say, instead of 5?
That's a really good question. So same like what I mentioned before, always check in with me anyways. Before I answer this question, we just want to make sure that we're both on the same page and kind of your progression and the objectives you have. But there's also a limitation on the degree itself. So I believe it is 8 years. If you don't mind, Alexa, just sharing the link. This is to the academic calendar, which talks about various regulations that we have at U of C as well as through SAPL. And so this degree timeframe that you just see in the chat right now talks about the maximum that you can take to finish your degree. So in there, it talks about the 8 years from when you start. So that's where you want to plan. How long will it take? Will it take more than 8 years? If that's the case, you definitely want to chat with me. But I would say even right now, if you're thinking of taking less and you're not sure how that would look, what that would look like, let's connect one-on-one, because I want to make sure whatever your plan is feasible and you don't time out on your degree, because that would be the suckiest part, is if you spend a lot of time, but you took just a little bit too long and can't finish the degree.
Okay, and yes, I did put that link into the chat there.
Okay.
There's one more question that I have here in the chat. So please, if you have any final questions, please put them into the chat. But this one is, okay, so other than, registering for courses, attending orientation, what are some of the other things that students should be aware of that maybe they have to do between now and then, and how will we communicate with them? They don't want to miss out on
Yes.
any important deadlines or things they have to do. So, and then also secondary here, and any advice we have for getting started.
Yeah, very, very, very good questions. A probably like loaded questions because there's a lot that you can do. I would say first and foremost, make sure that you're setting up all your U of C stuff. So making sure that your U Calgary email is set up, and then sync to your phone or wherever you check most frequently, because you're already receiving a lot of information from us as well as from main campus. So things like inviting you to orientation or reminders about what's going on and workshops to sign up for, events that are coming up. Those will come from us and other offices across campus. And the main email that they're going to use is your U Calgary email. And moving forward, as you become a student here with us, that is the most important email that you should be checking, because just for privacy reasons, for any student specific file information, we can only send through a U Calgary email. So you want to make sure that you're transitioning over to that U Calgary email and using that for all of your communications. Sometimes I'll tell students like, hey, if you have, let's say, your Gmail synced onto your phone, you might want to also add the Outlook app on your phone so that you can sync that email and get the updates there. It's very common that students miss out on a lot of stuff because they didn't check their U Calgary email, especially as a current email over the spring, summer. Sometimes they go on vacation and they forget checking it, and then they miss out on a lot of important things. So I would say you want to start off on the right foot, get your U Calgary email set up, and all the tech information like the electronic ID, sign in, all of that set up alongside with it. Make sure that you're already syncing to it so that you can pay attention to that and kind of follow from there. Because right now, from now until the start of September, all the emails that you're receiving are all reminders about like, hey, this is how you get started. Hey, this is something you need to do. Don't forget about this. So it can be very overwhelming. I would say make sure that you're checking your email, and we're here. So if you're ever like, that email had 50 things and I don't know what all of them mean, you can always check in with me, either through one of the group advising sessions where you can just ask all the questions, and maybe other people in the chat can actually learn from your questions because maybe they didn't think about it yet. Or you can set up a one-on-one appointment with me and we can go through some of those things together. As a reminder, I do virtual and in-person appointments. So if you prefer to do a Zoom meeting, we can do that. Or if you want to actually come in person to this office, we can sit there and go through things together as well. So I'd say like that is probably the main biggest thing, is to make sure that you're set up electronically to receive all the information and process it. As a side note, if you haven't been receiving any emails on your U Calgary account, even though you've set it up, also let me know as soon as possible, because you should have at least received one from me recently. So if you haven't seen that yet, we want to look into make sure that is rectified as soon as possible so you're not missing out on the details. And I would say that is probably the biggest advice I would give first, because all of the things that I mentioned after this is basically tied to all the different reminders and correspondence that you're receiving in the next few weeks. So I would say like that would be, take that information, explore all of it, and then come back and ask us more questions. So like, for example, in orientation, when you do attend it, you're probably going to be introduced to a lot of things, and you might not remember all of them, but some of them, if you have something that you're like, oh, I really want to make sure I understand this, or like I have more questions about it, that you note it down, and you can always follow up with me and we can kind of break down some of that information and see how it pertains to you.
Awesome. Okay. So I want to thank everyone for your questions and your engagement. A friendly reminder to please fill out that survey from the QR code and the link in the chat. Also, we are so excited for September to come and for you to be here and learning in this new program. We're here to support you. So like Sarah said, if we have any questions, please let us know. There is no question that is too small. We will be here for all of them. So thank you. And yeah, I hope you have the great rest of your summer, and then we'll see you in the fall.
Thank you, everyone.